I'm David Hargis.
And I'm Aubrey Hargis. And today we are talking about helping children understand natural disasters from a Montessori perspective. We're going to talk about freedom within limits, which is a core Montessori principle that we have. And we have an adorable and educational craft to share with you from, that is actually not from, but an extension of our theme cave. So if you're out there, welcome. If you can see and hear us, give us a thumbs up. And
For no reason whatsoever.
For no reason whatsoever.
We just want to know for sure that you can hear and see us.
Yes.
No, there is a great bad activity coming up later, and if you're out there in the audience, let us know. You can download the PDF version of the template Aubrey's going to use, or we're going to use, in the community. You just head over to the community, go to the post where this link was found. There's a PDF, and you can download it. And if you're joining us and are not a member of our community, why don't you join? You can get that PDF plus cave. Ooh, our theme of the month. And in fact, if you go now, you can sign up and get a 7-day free trial, and you can get this PDF and cave.
Yes.
Oh, good. We are live.
Good,
hello.
live.
Thank you
Hi,
for waiting with us.
Okay. One never knows with technology what will happen. But you mentioned community.
I did mention community.
You mentioned community, and speaking of community, we actually have been thinking a lot about our community members and our family and our friends, because we know that a lot of you are out there dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. And adding to that, hot on its heels is another hurricane.
Yeah.
Right? So I know that this is something that is going on out there. We've actually had some posts from our community members who have been talking about how they're dealing with it with their children, asking for advice, and just, commiserating and sharing love and support, which I adore as a part of our community, that we are there global, worldwide, for members to come in and get the support that they need, a place where they feel safe and where they can, just be themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary. I remember growing up in Texas, we had plenty of natural disasters in the form of tornadoes and pretty violent storms.
Oh, yeah, regularly.
Right? And seeing tornadoes and, seeing destruction from tornadoes, it was really terrifying. So as a parent, how would you help? Like, my uncles live in Tampa. I know we have folks who are in Florida. I know we have folks who are in the Georgia, North Carolina area and have been affected by that. And I know we have folks all over the world who are experiencing other forms of natural and human-made disasters.
We ourselves live in earthquake territory.
Yeah, and it's a heat wave right now, and it's really
a big earthquake in a while, but knock on wood, we never know when it's going to happen.
So how do you help a child? Like, so what is it? So going back to what I was thinking, like as a kid, it was terrifying.
Yeah.
What would you say? What would Montessori tell us about how to help children process these big, scary things?
Well, the Montessori pedagogy, the teaching method, it actually gives us a lot of information about children's development. And from what we know about how they develop as people, we can understand more about how they process things naturally. And so I think it's important to realize that your child is processing the information about what's happening in their environment in the exact same way that they are processing the sensory feel from any of the materials that you have from home, any of the lessons that you happen to be giving them. They are taking that information in the same way. The difference, I think, that happens when we talk about natural disasters or scary things is that our children are actually also super, super sensitive to our emotions and our state of mind and state of being. And so we know this from little tiny babies, like they are hyper fixated on usually their parent, but I'll say caregiver's face, right? Like when they're, think about 3 months old, like at first when they're born, they really literally can see from this distance. And they're just like fixated on the face of the person who is holding them.
That's right.
And they continue to be fixated on the face. And even little babies and toddlers, they are so tuned into your face, like the slightest concern, like they are so much better at telling the slight changes in emotion on your face than I think even adults are, right? Sometimes as adults, we kind of struggle, like, I can't tell, is this person like me or not like me? Or, is this person angry or are they just frustrated with something that's happening in their lives? Like, we can't really tell, but the little children, like babies and toddlers and young preschoolers especially, like they are just zoned in to our temperament, and our facial changes. So even if we're trying to act as though nothing is happening, like they can tell. They can tell from our voices, they can tell from our faces, our body posture. They just intuit how we are feeling. And if they sense that we are feeling anxious, they're going to feel the need to be protected, right? And they're going to take on some of that anxiety as well. So I think, so not that we should just never be anxious around our kids. Our children are incredibly resilient, so even though they might take in the information and that information might be, Dad is scared, what does that mean for me? Does that mean I need to be protected? Does that mean I'm unsafe? And so what the child naturally does is your child will process that in their brain through their senses, through their imagination. And no matter where children are in the world, what kind of tragedy, be it great or be it small, they're going to process it in the same way. And that way is through play.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. So you'll see children play even in the weirdest, by our standards, circumstances. I'm thinking of like the pictures, the famous photos of the children in London playing in the rubble following the Blitz.
Yeah.
Right? Like
we see those same pictures today of the pictures of
right,
Gaza.
or in the aftermath of Helene, or whatever we're going to see in the aftermath of Milton. Like you would find children playing in the aftermath of disaster. And I think Montessori herself even found that, right? It's like her, the original Casa dei Bambini, it wasn't luxurious.
No.
But the children found a way, and she saw that repeatedly, even before she started, like the children would find a way to create play.
Yeah, and also to create order out of the chaos that was around them.
So
that's something that's naturally in children. It's one of the reasons that we give them sensorial materials like the pink tower or the knob cylinders, because they have this natural desire to want to make order out of the chaos. And it's true on this little micro physical plane as well as like on a larger scale. So I don't know if you have any memories of like a big thunderstorm passing over your backyard. You're all hunkered down. Tornado warnings are going off. I mean, it just happens. If you live in Texas, you know what we're talking about, or Kansas or Oklahoma.
Tornado
or any
alley,
of those, right? The warnings are going off. You're hunkered down, and then it passes, and then you go outside, and like the storm is cleared. But what has happened?
Yeah, it could be
all the branches have fallen, right? That like maybe the power lines are down, or maybe you just in your own little safe yard. Maybe it's not about power lines. Maybe it's just like all the pecans fell off of the pecan tree, or branches have fallen down. And do you remember like how you felt about that as a child?
Yeah, it was that disorder. The thing I remember about disorder is the sky. Right, the sky becoming green, purple.
But after. The after.
I don't remember the after. I'm saying that what I remember is the before and the chaos, and then. But you're right, yes. And then the storm would pass, and then often it would be clear, or it could be clear, or there'd be rain, perhaps.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like there'd be branches, and you'd be surveying the damage.
Right, but as a child, I don't know if you remember, but I have memories of also being interested in the branches that
Not
had
me. I was
fallen.
terrified.
Really? Mm-hmm. Of the branches that had fallen?
No, of the whole thing. So I was like not in a.
Oh.
Sorry.
Well, what I have noticed from our own kids, when a storm passes over and like branches fall, kids are interested.
For sure.
Do you remember our kids, like when they find fallen branches and natural materials out in the wild, like they would want to climb on them, or they would want to build forts out of them or interact with them in some way. I'm sorry you don't have those memories yourself, but I've noticed that in my children. I'm curious what's happening in our chat as well.
Yeah, Pia says we had a huge storm when my son was 2. Everyone was frantic, trying to get the doors and windows closed. Suddenly, at age 4, 2 years later, a huge paranoia about storms came in. Yeah, that's what I remember.
That's very common at age 4 too.
Yeah,
it is the age of anxiety, and I remember that with our own kids too. Like age 4 is like an awareness age of anxious fears about death, fears about disaster. But the key to helping children through that is to help them tap into their natural ability to process through play.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder if maybe why that didn't happen for you.
Well, I think you're right. I think that it's what you said earlier about...
Because we talked about children playing on rubble, and that's what I noticed our own children doing when...
Yeah.
There are broken things.
I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. Yeah. I think every child is different, and we all have our own neurochemistry that, and I think to be totally transparent, I would say it's probably related to the kind of the anxiety that I continue to have as an adult, and just like it probably was how it manifests when I was little. But I think also...
Also, you didn't grow up in a Montessori environment.
Well, that's for sure. And I also grew up in a home filled with anxiety.
Yes.
Right? And so what I think also is a factor that I've tried to combat because, trying to, as a parent, was that it's what you said about the kind of the truth. And so in my home, my mother specifically was also very, very anxious about things and storms. And I remember there was lots of talk about like, what would happen and how we had to be safe and hiding and the deadliness. And I think as a child, it probably just really affected me in a way that maybe if it had been approached from a perspective of maybe less fear, but more serious.
Curiosity.
Maybe. It's serious. You do have to be careful, but... the fear becomes infectious, right?
Yeah.
So I think this goes to back to the idea of like children don't understand the concept of a brave face, I think. So you may be smiling, but they know that you're scared. So they get that. And then they take it at face value. And then they use the play to sort of figure through all this and make sense. So the play is important because it helps them construct a reality that may not be available to them otherwise, and gives them a sense of control. And so if their only exposure is fear and then no sense of control that follows it, then it compounds. Now again, as Pia was saying, it's very, it's super common for children to go through periods of more or less anxiety about things.
For sure.
As a part of the developmental process. And that's nothing you're doing wrong as a parent.
Yeah.
We're all just doing our best. But I do think that's right. So if you are facing a disaster or you have lived through the consequences of a disaster, really one of the best things you can provide your children is time to play.
Yeah.
And to allow them to process what they've seen and to gain a sense of control. And for you to recognize that they're going to know the truth. Whether you are trying to put on a brave face or not, they just take life as it is, straightforward. And so they know when you are not being genuine. And so I'm not saying you have to like give them a harsh dose of reality. That's not healthy either. That goes to like building on the anxiety. But I do think that you have to find the balance. This is serious. We're going to take action and we're going to be together as a family, and we're going to work through the consequences, or we're going to hold together as a community, or whatever it might be. And maybe taking a scientific approach to what's happening as well can be empowering, right?
Yeah, it sure
What is
can.
a hurricane? How does it form? What makes it so big? How is it shaped? What happens when it hits land?
I'll tell you, I did grow up in a Montessori family, Montessori-oriented family, and a Montessori community, and I went to a Montessori school, and I still, up through like the age of 6 or 7, thought a tornado was like a like a superhero figure, like a supervillain, I guess.
yeah.
Like, I imagined the tornado being like someone flying around, pulling up trees, and, you know, I know, it's weird, right?
No, I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
There was
right?
a lot of information around me about the natural world, and of course, like, I'm sure, like, we were researching, like, what a tornado was and stuff, but still, that imaginative part of my mind was so strong as a child that I concocted this whole thing in my head while I was hiding in the closet, you know. But the things, there are a few things I want to bring up. One is that as parents, adopting a Montessori mindset intentionally, there are some things that we can do to make life better for our children when they are experiencing moments of natural disasters or of environmental fear, okay? One, we can allow them to play. I remember playing tornado with my brother. And I don't know if you have that memory or not, but I remember doing it a lot. Hey, you want to play tornado? Yeah, let's go play tornado. And we would like run out in the yard and we would spin in a circle and probably pretend to like rip up trees and you know, turn over sand castles and stuff in our sandbox. But I remember doing a lot of like playing tornado. Like, I was the tornado, now you be the tornado, and now we're both tornadoes, and you know, lots of that kind of play. And another example is having moved here when our children were still little. We had a child in the beginning of the second plane and a child firmly in the first plane when we moved here to San Francisco. We'd never lived on the West Coast before, and suddenly earthquakes are a real possibility, and it's a real tangible fear that people do have here, just as strong as tornado fear in Tornado Alley. And I remember our children playing earthquake. I don't know if you remember this, but they would like build up their Legos and they'd be like, it's an earthquake, and then the Legos would topple over. And in fact, there is a museum here.
Cal Academy.
No.
No?
It's the Randall Museum.
Oh,
It is
okay.
a children's museum, and it's a very simple museum. If you're ever in San Francisco, I always recommend people go there.
It's actually just like a
People
city
almost
park,
never
right?
follow
It's like
that
a rec center.
recommendation. Yeah. People are always like, no, I want to
It's
see the
free.
cable cars and stuff. But actually, if you come visit San Francisco, one of the best museum experiences you could do is to go to the Randall Museum. It's free.
Yeah,
and
it's just a
there's an
city
earthquake
essay.
exhibit down in like the bottom
Yeah, that's
half.
right.
And it's literally like Legos, like Duplos,
that's right.
and you're supposed to build a structure, and then you hit a button, and the Duplos like the whole platform shakes until the Duplos fall. And so our kids used to play that game a lot. They would thunder their feet on the floorboards and until things were shaking, and they would just play earthquake. And so allowing your child to just naturally engage in this kind of play, they're going to do it. Another example is we had a lot of fear, you know, while our children were young, especially of living in an urban environment and witnessing and being around so many people who are experiencing homelessness, who may or may not be mentally stable. And so that was a real fear. It wasn't a natural disaster, but it was an environmental safety fear. You know, hold my hand, you know, we're going to walk together. Yes, that person is yelling obscenities and we're going to stay calm and it's a human being, you know, but also a little bit of like anxiety around that kind of situation. Is it going to be a dangerous situation or not? We don't know. So our children would often play like they were people experiencing homelessness, you know, and build a little tent and, you know, pretend like they were living in there. And not in a way that was I think, disrespectful, but in a way that they were just like trying to process these
And
anxieties
what is this
around.
about? How does this
Yeah,
work? Yeah.
that's why also children pretend to be dead. How many children have you seen do
Right.
that? How common is that? You can tell us out there if you've ever been shocked that your child wanted you to pretend to be dead, or pretend to be
Especially after
dying
maybe someone
or
has
something.
passed, a relative, grandma, grandpa,
Yeah.
somebody like that.
Yes, and it can be shocking.
Yeah, that's right.
And it can linger. That kind of pretend play can last a lot longer than you think it might for children.
Yeah, because that's the other side of it, and I know we need to move forward, but like that, they don't have, there's no brave face, awareness for a younger child. They just see the fear that's like you're smiling, but you're afraid, and they know that you're afraid, and they don't
Yeah.
understand the motivation that you're trying to convey. But the same goes for like, you were here and now you're not here. Where did you go? Or how can this person, what happened to my neighbor's house? It's here and now it's gone. It was burned. Like that was a fear for our kids, right? Because we live in an area where there's all the houses are connected. It's row houses. And so the fear is like one house burns and then it spreads down from the next house to the next house. And that's because they're all, our neighbor is on this other side of this wall. So when there would be fires in our neighborhood, it would be really, really intense. And then they would see the aftermath, and we would think and talk. They would talk a lot about like, remember that house? I wonder what happened to them, and what do you think caused the fire? What do you think caused the fire? What do you think caused the fire? Do you think they got out okay?
I know.
And so they're trying to process this stuff, and so some of that would come out in play, like you said, and some of it would come out with just like questions, because it's the other side of the coin, like the sense of. The superpower is that they kind of let things roll past them. And the downside is that it can be overly confusing. But frankly, if I had my druthers, I would I'd probably be less concerned with trying to suss out the internal motivations of everyone on the earth and just sort of take it at face value. They're probably much happier.
I know. Children's brains are so resilient. I want to give one more example before we move on. This is from when we lived in Texas, and we had this great big lightning storm, and our kids were, of course, terrified because the thunder was so loud. And then it actually happened. Lightning struck down just like a block over from us, a tree, like, I don't know, it was like a block over from our house, just like practically in our backyard. Lightning literally struck a tree in the ground. And afterwards, we went out into the streets afterwards. I don't know if you were with us or not while we were doing this, but I remember taking the children on a walk during the aftermath of all of the down stuff, and knowing that there weren't any unsafe down power lines or anything. We waited and made sure that things were safe. But we went out on a walk and we held hands and we just surveyed the damage together. We went looking to see what trees had fallen, and we went hunting for the spot where
I think we found the lightning
struck.
glass.
And in fact, we did. Yeah, we found the place where the lightning had struck. It was a burned patch in the middle of someone's front yard, right next to their tree. And there was glass inside the earth. And I remember that we collected some of the glass, and this wasn't glass that had been dropped on the ground. There was glass that was made by the lightning striking the soil, right? Yeah. The heat of the soil and the rocks melted it into glass. Amazing. So there must have been silica, I guess, in the ground to have come together like that in that immense energy and heat. And I remember we gathered some up and we brought it back to our house, and we were just in awe of the power of the forces on the earth.
Yes.
And it turned what could have been a continued scary, if we had just stayed in our house and hemmed and hawed about the lightning and the scariness,
close.
right? It was so
We're
close, right?
Almost hurt.
Then
it could happen
I
next
can
time.
see how more anxiety could develop from that. But instead, we took a Montessori approach and we went out and we just absorbed, because that's what children are so good at. They're so good at absorbing, and we can take on some of that, our children's natural inclination to want to absorb and understand their world. And we can also get curious. And then I think good things can come from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly.
Not to minimize, tragedy, but to find the silver linings and to help our children, look towards hope for the future rather than fixating on the terrible thing that happened.
That's right.
All right. Well, and there are several examples of that in our community right now. So if you're in our community, take a little scroll through the feed, and there are some posts of members who are sharing what they're doing right now, giving each other advice on helping each other to deal with the whole hurricane issue that is happening right now. And I think the lessons that we can learn from that can definitely be applied to any situation, because nobody lives in an area where there's no natural disaster possibility.
That's right.
All of us, are going to experience worldly natural events, that are going to potentially affect us. So in our community, someone actually wrote a letter this morning to our community, and here is the letter.
Wow! So now wait a minute. How did this letter get here? They just wrote it. Was this brought by a bat? Did a bat lift this letter? She wrote it out. It was carried by a bat.
I love you so much.
Oh!
Okay, ready? Bats do not caw.
Oh.
Squeak!
Squeak, squeak! What sound does a bat make? Folks, I have to know. Ask your children, what sound does a bat make, and let us know right now.
Okay, here is the letter that came in that I thought would be great for us to touch on today in our live. Dear Child of the Redwoods, I am reading a book, Free to Learn by Peter Gray, which I've never gotten to before this. In his description of the Sudbury Valley School, he discusses the benefits of a democratic school where the children have their entire days free with no adult lessons unless requested, and total freedom to leave campus to explore their interests and nature with age-appropriate guidelines. How would you compare this to a Montessori education? It sounds idyllic, but as a die-hard Montessorian, I'm wondering what I'm missing. He treats Montessori very quickly and posits that it's too adult-led. And this is from...
P.S. Send the bat back.
This is from Isabelle. Thank you so much, Isabelle, for writing this letter into our community. I know our members are also going to have thoughts on this, but I wanted to bring this into our Power Hour today because those of you who don't know Peter Gray, I'll just go ahead and just show you the book that Isabelle has been reading. It's called Free to Learn by Peter Gray. It is a great book with lots of insight. I can see I've kind of bookmarked little sections. One of the sections I've bookmarked is actually called The Playful State of Mind.
Ooh.
So that relates very well to our conversation about natural disasters. So in this book,
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Free to Learn, Peter Gray is a child developmental psychologist expert. I don't know what it says, technically on his bio. You can read that for us.
He's a research professor in the Department of Psychology at Boston College.
Ah, awesome. And yes, so a psychologist who writes a lot about child development and education. And he is very aligned with the unschooling philosophy, or I guess we could call it a pedagogy, even though unschool is kind of like no teaching, right? We have a whole episode all about unschooling, so you're welcome to look that up on our YouTube channel if you want to go deeper on that. But he talks about the Sudbury Valley School in this section, and I don't know if any of you out there knows about Sudbury. I have never visited a Sudbury school. Do you know anything about them?
That they're democratic schools.
Yeah.
They came out of England, right?
So the concept of a democratic free school came from Dewey.
Well, I know that, but isn't the famous one is in England, though, right?
And yes, there is a very famous free school called Summerhill that is in England. And there has been a lot written about it. And so you can, something that you might want to do, Isabelle, is just for your own interest, as a follow-up, to this, exploration that you're having into unschooling and democratic free schools is to go read the book about Summerhill. There are also some documentaries that are very insightful from children who grew up at Summerhill that are both positive and negative. So I think that the difference between the democratic free school concept and Montessori, at core, really does come down to the role of the adult in the learning environment.
Yeah, and that just set the context a little bit from my point of view. I am a big fan of Dewey's work.
Me too.
And he and Montessori had a lot in common, but there are key differences. But one of the things I like about Dewey that I think is actually super relevant that we still haven't figured out is that he felt that one of the key purposes of schools was to prepare people to be citizens in a democratic system. And so he wanted children to have to engage in democratic processes, writing essentially constitutions and rules and enforcing them and determining on their own as a way to prepare them to be free and invested members of a democratic society, because he felt like our democracy required and that was the main purpose of the school. Now, I don't know that Maria would necessarily disagree with all of that, but I don't know that she would have stated that the main purpose was to prepare them. I think she would have said more broadly, like the main purpose is to prepare them for like individual journey and fulfillment.
Well, no. She was also very concerned with the social cohesion of the community. And so what I would say, I will say I've never visited a Sudbury school. So I do not know what it is like in a Sudbury school specifically. I have heard from a lot of parents who have toured or experienced democratic free schools is that in the older time, children were more inclined to go out into their world and explore and to do hands-on play, and that in a modern democratic free school, there tends to be, it's free, and so children tend to bring their technology with them. There tends to be a lot of free play in terms of video games, are totally available. And there are, I think that kind of butts head with Montessori's philosophy in a bit. I don't think that you would go into, I don't know any Montessori school where you would go in and you would just see children playing video games for most of the day, or just
one
like
that you wouldn't consider like doing Montessori.
It just wouldn't be a Montessori school, because part of our philosophy as Montessorians does really incorporate that sensory, emphasis. And so I think from the perspective of Montessorians, children probably get enough time playing video games at home. It's kind of debatable how much video game time playing is good for children. Peter Gray would argue that it should be unlimited.
Yeah, they'll self-regulate, right?
Yeah, children will self-regulate. In our personal experience, we have not seen, even when we allow our children to freely play as long as we want, we've noticed that as parents, we still have to set some limits and boundaries around game time, computer time, screen time use, because of the inherent addictive nature of gaming, and this is not due to the, any particular specific games, but I think that we kind of collectively have come to the understanding that a lot of the software that we are using has intentionally been created in order to be addictive.
Yeah, and to solve for the burnout problem that you might feel if, like in an older environment, even 30 or 40 years ago when you were playing games, because of the nature of how games worked, you might come to a point where you wanted to take a break. But in the modern social era, there's so much to kind of bring you back when you start to get tired of it, that it's a totally new animal, never seen before. I don't know what
Here's an example. Your child plays a game, their creature dies. What happens? They respawn, right?
Yeah.
You don't usually, it doesn't usually just die and say the end. You know, I mean, in the olden days, I know a lot of games are like, start over, you know, and you would kind of, there would be a point where you'd like, okay, do I want to start over or not? Or am I ready to finish? But I think in a lot of modern games, it's just like, let's go again. I don't know, you play more games than I do, but
Yeah, no,
that's what I've noticed.
But I also think it's that so many of the modern games are also, there's a lot of community, which people who support it would say is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
There's so much community in game Roblox or whatever,
Yeah.
right? You're playing with other people. And so that it keeps you engaged. And I suppose there is a benefit, but there are also a lot of consequences.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about specifically how we've engineered, let's say, video platforms or social media platforms. You get bored with something, you click, right? Like TikTok is popular because it's a continuation of the feed concept that Facebook pioneered, whatever, 15 years ago, where it's like, okay, there's always something new to see, and it keeps you engaged and hooked. And adults, we struggle with that.
Oh, yeah.
It's no different and perhaps even harder for the younger, less developed minds. And so when you have something like a free school in this environment,
It has unlimited, you know, it has no limits and just unlimited play in any way that you want, and it allows gaming and screen time to be part of that, it becomes really difficult, I think, sometimes to pry children away from the dopamine rush that they're getting. I know I have personally felt that
Right.
before. It's hard for me to stop watching shows on Netflix sometimes because cliffhanger, here's the next episode.
yeah,
You know?
I mean, it
And
just
it's like
automatically
dopamine,
play the
dopamine,
next
dopamine.
episode. Like, you won't
Yeah.
even finish the credits.
So there's a lot built into the way we have presented technology that could be made better for humans.
Just a little
Right?
tiny bit.
Just a little tiny bit better, right? And so that's one beef that Montessorians would have from a total free school environment, right?
Yeah.
In the modern context, all right? Another beef that we Montessorians would have with it is if children have the ability to choose whether they want to engage in a lesson or not, or to be taught. One of the problems that came out of Summerhill was some children actually came out of that environment not knowing how to read
Yeah,
and
they
not
were illiterate.
feeling like they were literate, right? Why is that? Because nobody told them that it was an important skill to learn and encouraged them to come to the lesson and made it fun for them. In my understanding, a lot of the teaching at Summerhill was kind of hit and miss. Some of it was great, some of it was real boring, and some of those core subjects, if they were taught in a way that wasn't hands-on, sensorial, engaging, developmentally aligned, then why would children want to attend that lesson as opposed to just building tree houses all day? Which I would also argue is great for kids.
Of course.
But as Montessorians, we would say, yeah, it's great for kids. Let your kid be out in the treehouse and be creative out in the world. But also, we believe that there are many wonderful experiences that we can have, that we can share with our children, and that they won't have a craving or a desire to know more about something if they are never exposed.
That's right.
And that's part of the premise of our entire thematic units. It's not that we believe that these are the only lessons children should be learning, or that all children must cover all of the foundation content and all of the thematic content. It's not about covering content. It's about offering. You know, you use that analogy about giving your children a rainbow display of foods on a plate to choose from. But if there's not an adult who's doing it, who's constantly offering and engaging and making learning fun and hands-on and concrete and interesting, and putting a limit around some of those barriers to learning, which I think as Montessorians we would say technology can be a barrier.
Oh, 100%.
And the kind of endorphins that you get from being out in nature and seeing an actual hawk, land in front of you, I think is chemically different. And I can't prove this. I just have a gut feeling, friends. So I'm not a biologist. We're, I don't know what you would call it, like a
some kind of science guy.
Neurologist. I'm not a science guy, right? Or a science girl. But I would argue, just based on my emotional state, that when I go out and I see that hawk land in front of me and go,
yeah.
Right? Or maybe it's a crow. When I see that bird in front of me, like maybe that dopamine rush that I'm getting, maybe it's different from the kind of dopamine rush that I get from a game.
I mean,
right?
I'm no science guy myself, but I do believe like there are we've talked about this before with like forest bathing. Like there are many studies that show that humans, when they interact with nature, there is a measurable difference in their biochemistry and so forth, in a positive way. I agree. I'm not a fan of a complete unschooling approach. And actually, I think that the work that was done in the 70s on unschooling, I think has kind of gone beyond what he originally imagined.
Maybe.
I mean, that's my opinion. I know we have some really ardent unschool supporters out there. Do what you feel is best for your family.
Well, in my personal experience, unschoolers are very diverse.
Totally. So we're not going to paint with the broad brush. That's absolutely right. But I think that there's a reason I would not consider myself an unschooler, and that's because I think that the child has the ability to self-teach. We know that from Montessori's work, but the world is filled with things that are designed to distract or destroy. And as parents, teachers, elders, whatever we are in that society, we have an obligation to support the generation that comes and to help them make good choices, but choices. So the example is that the well-stocked, we always said that the children could feed themselves, right? So you fill your fridge, the children from a very early age were given permission to go and take what they want and eat it. But we didn't fill the fridge with candy bars and soda and ice cream and then a few carrots, because there's a ton of evidence also that shows you put a plate of broccoli and a plate of cookies, the kids eat the cookies. Like it's just hardwired into us to want the sugar, the fat. We have that starvation mindset. There's a lot of studies that show that when we start eating that stuff, we actually can't be sated anymore, and so then we just want more and more of it. That stuff is bad news. And if you were out in sort of an environment, an Edenic environment, then maybe it would work. But the fact is, we live in a mass consumerist, industrialized, post-industrialized world where there are a lot of competing interests. And we as the elder, the parent, the teacher, have a responsibility to try and counter that using what we know about the science of learning and development. And so give your kids a chance to fill their plate, but curate what goes on that plate. And I would say that is kind of the difference. So it is adult-led. There's no doubt about it. There is, no, for sure. I'm going to say that the adult is going to choose what comes home from the grocery store. But the child is going to choose what to eat from the fridge once it's been stocked. And that, I think, is the distinction, that there is an adult-led component to a point.
Well, Maria Montessori actually, in The Absorbent Mind, puts it really nicely. She says, and I'll just spout off this quote, she says, "To let the child do what he likes when he has not yet developed any powers of control is to betray the idea of freedom."
Beautiful. That is beautiful. Say that again.
Isn't it amazing? To let the child do as he likes when he has not yet developed any powers of control is to betray the idea of freedom. So children are young. They don't often know what they need. They can show us what they need with their behavior and their curiosity and their natural proclivity to want to just play. We can learn a lot from them, but they also, in order to develop as their best selves, they need boundaries, they need limits, and they need guidance. And in Montessori, we definitely work to give them both freedom and limits.
And I want to say that this does not end at the age of 5.
No.
We just spent this morning helping our 17-year-old make better choices in preparation for the day, because he's still a kid. He's a big kid. He's almost as tall as me. He looks like a grown person, but his mind is still immature. He hasn't quite developed the power of control that will ultimately lead him to the freedom he wants. And so it is an ongoing process. I know most of our audience, you have little ones, but my point is that I think as a society, we should remember this. This continues for a lot longer.
Yeah, and developmentally, we're talking about like age 24 for women and 30 for men.
50,
no,
70.
literally, like their brains are still developing
No, for
until
sure.
they're about 30 years old. On average, that's what science says about the brain. Now, I want to make one more point about this, and that is that in a Montessori lower elementary classroom, it is a democratic environment if it is done correctly. If you go into a Montessori lower elementary or upper elementary or further than that school, what you ideally are going to see in an authentic program is the children leading the other children to make decisions about what's good for the community. And this is like 100% aligned and borrowed from the Dewey's democratic free school principles. And it is in the Montessori method already, but mostly it's in the lower elementary classroom itself rather than the primary, which is why you don't hear about it a whole lot. But we're talking about, I have never been in a Montessori lower elementary classroom where there wasn't like a whole class meeting that was run by the kids.
Yep.
And so in an authentic Montessori environment, the children are voting on things. They are taking leadership within their own community, but there's definitely an adult there to help them to make good decisions. And in my understanding, the kind of things that were happening at Summerhill and in some other free schools is the children would decide on their own rules, and sometimes those rules would be really weird and, shall I say, like unjust, at times, just because, children at older ages especially do tend to form cliques and want to,
Never adults.
right? Yeah. Well, anyway, sometimes, there might be good rules and there are bad rules out there. Even adults make bad rules, as David would remind us. But in a true democratic environment that is guided by adults, the adult's role would be to help the children to make good decisions as a community. And so it would be led by the kids, but guided by the adults. And so an example of that might be an adult, giving some children, a small number of children, some leadership opportunity offering. In fact, in one school that I worked at, we would say, okay, it's your turn to lead the morning meeting and what's on your agenda. And then we would kind of run through with the kids what they plan to present to the group and, what they wanted to vote on and stuff. And so a lot of the good benefits of the democratic free school are in the Montessori elementary classrooms.
As we're talking about it, what occurs to me is that this is ultimately about purpose. That if you're in an unschooling or a free schooling environment and there's no group cohesion, there's therefore no social consequence, no communal consequence for just never learning to read or spending all your time playing video games.
Yep.
And so you're making a personal choice and there's only personal consequences, and that's fine. But the goal of the school, of Dewey's concept, and I think of Montessori too, is to help individuals find the balance between their personal liberties and their responsibilities to the larger group. Because it's only through the community that we really achieve. So how do you find that balance? How do you not give up your true self without also sacrificing the cohesion that's necessary for society, your clan, your group, your family to progress? So that's the key. And if in your democratic system you can create natural outcomes and consequences for not progressing forward, then I think you can make it work. But because it's very, very, very hard, I think coming in and having, let me help you pick a menu, or let me give you an array of things to, and then you make your menu from that, is a way to kind of create a kind of purpose. The purpose being we want to learn these essential things. And the order you learn them in, how you learn them, the depth you explore them, that's your choice. But it's important, I would say it's important that everybody knows what art is and understands how to make and understand art, or science and physical science and the core academic areas. And that in some way is saying, like, this is the purpose. We're giving you a set purpose, but also saying, and we want you to find your voice in there. So that's kind of the goal, right?
Ideally, with our Montessori foundation cards, for the primary years, you as the guide, your child does not yet have the control or mental capability to make decisions about what to learn when it comes to all of these core subjects. That's your job as the guide. But in the elementary years, your child would take responsibility for their own learning and work with these cards with you as you guide them.
All right. Well, we have one more segment, but first I want to answer a few questions or comments that we have here, and then we're going to have some fun with bats.
Beautiful.
Okay, so going back a little bit, yes, huge. Okay. Naomi says, we went on a trip this summer, and while out walking with the 3 kids, a big rain shower started, and we saw lots of lightning. We had to tuck under a covering outside some shops and wait it out. Now, 2 months later, my newly 5-year-old is also fascinated by storms, and they're in every game she makes up. Yes, that's right. That's that processing for sure. They are also recently been exposed to the Bible story of Jesus calming the waters, right? That was also super intriguing to them. Yeah, and I think that is a great. I like that because you could see throughout all the different ways that humans have told stories and been manifest. We find floods and fires and so forth, and
they say there's a flood in every single.
Yes,
religion,
right?
I
think I think they find it all over the world. Yeah. And so you're absolutely right, and I like the power of creation and God's, speaking to us through these occurrences that make us feel small. Right? Yep. We're powerless to them. Pia says, Vidya says, we don't witness super huge storms, but we have seen trees falling. And as a child, I did experience being trapped in floods. I had to be rescued, and my father was carrying me, so I felt safe. And I still feel terrified when in water that's deeper than my hip, especially in strong waves in the sea. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm so glad you are still with us, of course. That is very terrifying. Let's see. Okay. Pia says, my son is very, very curious about natural disasters. He wants me to get him books about hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes.
Great.
None of which you get in Delhi. Should I be reading this stuff to him? That's a good question. I mean, I think it depends. I don't know. I don't remember how old your child is.
Her son is on the cusp between primary and lower elementary. And I would say absolutely it's the age. Yeah, especially if he's expressing curiosity and interest. Now, you might also notice some anxiety raising, and it being incorporated into pretend play, and that is all normal and natural. The Montessori approach would definitely be, yes, lean into that, especially if he's interested, and he'll let you know if it's too much.
He will. That's right. Read Aloud Magic says dopamine in one click. That's for sure. Okay.
I know it. In one like. We have a friend today.
Hi. I just read an important comment from Theo. Would you like to know what sound a bat makes?
Yes. What sound does a bat make? Oh! Does it go caw, caw? No, it doesn't.
Okay, you ready?
Does it go, oh? No.
No. You ready? It goes...
It goes what?
It doesn't make a sound.
It doesn't?
No.
Bats don't make a sound for real?
That's what Theo says.
Oh my goodness, they make no sound?
We can't hear it.
What?
That's what he says.
We can't hear
So-
the sounds that bat makes?
That's what he says. So I'm going to do it again. This is for all my bat friends out there. Okay, all the bats in the audience, that was for you. And thank you, Theo, for that awesome factoid. Thank you, thank you. All right, speaking of bats, I think we have one last segment.
Yes. Okay, so we want to show a craft for you. I know we have a lot of our community members online with us right now. So if you are doing cave with us, this will especially resonate with you. And it'll also resonate, I think, if you are celebrating spooky season.
Spooky season.
Yes. So this is an activity that did not make it into the cave unit because there are only so many lessons we can incorporate in for fear of overwhelm. You know, we don't want to overwhelm you, but if you have a minute to do this little craft sometime, or just set it up and model it for your child, it's just a really easy, it's an easy activity that you can do one afternoon. And you might especially want to do it if you are decorating for spooky season, because it's a very easy way to very suddenly have a lot of great little decorations.
And if you, I don't know where our cards are, but if you are in primary, you will find cutting on a line lessons.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so this is actually also a actual Montessori primary
It
lesson.
is. It is in a Montessori primary lesson. It's going to be found within the arts. Okay, so here are I think my scissors dropped. I'm going to have to go get them. But this is what you need for this lesson. You're going to need some black construction paper. And you're going to need something that is kind of stiff to be your template. And I just picked up this file folder. It's kind of thick enough. But before I got downstairs, I was looking for a cereal box, and someone had recycled the last cereal box of ours. But if you can rescue yours, or a cracker, you know, something with just like a little bit of that thin cardboard that's called chipboard. It's not quite cardboard.
Yeah.
That's what you're looking for in a template. This was a rotational activity I had in the kindergarten class out almost all the time.
You are guaranteed to have done some variation of this in your life.
I don't know about that.
You don't think, well, I don't know about this specific one, but you've, you've cut something out.
Cut something out.
Paper
but
dolls.
cutting on the fold, I don't know.
All right, well,
Yeah, maybe paper dolls. Okay, so something kind of stiff to be your template, some black construction paper,
or color,
and
it doesn't have to be black. Come
you
on.
need an outline of a bat. Now, before I knew what David was doing upstairs, I just went to the internet and I just found some bats that I printed out. Here is one that was just a free printable I found online that was called Template of a Bat. All right, and I kind of enlarged it. I chose printing at the regular size would have been put at this big, but I wanted it big because I wanted it to fill the page like this. Okay, and I also found a picture of a real bat that was nice symmetry there, and I also enlarged it.
That could be fun.
You could use this as your template, or you could use something like this, but you also made some templates for our community, which is awesome. So this is, and our printer is being funky with these little dots
Yeah, we can do the
on
top
it,
down
but
if it's easier, but no, go ahead.
I don't know if you guys, can you see that? I can't tell if they can see it or not. We could do a top down. Would that be more helpful?
I don't know.
Give that a try.
Yeah, so if you're in our community and you are inspired by these bat templates, you can find them. Like I said earlier, you just go to the post where we linked this YouTube Live, and there's a comment that it has the PDF. Now, the template has, I think, 5 types of bats. So it has a great big bat that Aubrey is tracing right now.
I'm tracing it because it's very faint. I want
Well,
make
it's
sure
meant
that
to be
they can-
faint, but
make
not
sure that
for
they can
the
see
viewing audience.
Yeah. So you can see that it's just regular, nice little bat outline.
And if you are in that and you've been, I don't think we've done the little bat counting game yet. I think that comes up later in the month. But it's the same bat outline, so you can use this template if you wish.
Okay.
And then on the back, there's a bunch of different sizes. So there's teeny tiny ones to the great big one.
Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get my bat template, whether it is one that you found online. You're just going to kind of divide it in half. Same with this little guy. You're going to kind of fold it in half. You're going to fold that one in half so they can see how that works as well.
Alrighty.
And I'm going to make the template for the bat because we're going to reuse it. So really, you want it. You want to print them so that they're as big as they can be on a half-size piece of regular paper. And if you want it even bigger, you can free wing it, you know.
Free wing it.
All right. This is such a cute little template. So I'm going to cut this out here. And then we're going to use this as our template, and I'll show them how they can do that as well. Do you want to look in here? Because we're going to need, a white colored pencil. So you want to grab that for us.
Alrighty.
I'm cutting out our little template.
Now, not all bats are black.
No.
In fact, many are not.
Brown.
They're brown or
I should
red.
have grabbed some brown paper. I was just thinking about a silhouette in spooky season, but that's for sure.
Yeah, you can make all kinds, or you could cut them out and draw in color or watercolor them.
You could.
Yeah, you could string them. There's a lot of fun things you can do.
Okay, so if you were making a template for this, you would want to trace this onto a stiffer kind of piece of cardstock, or ideally a cereal box. That chipboard is like the best for making templates. But you want a template like this because this is what you're going to give your child. Okay, and if your child doesn't have the kind of fine motor skills to use the template yet, you can definitely do it for them, but I always had a template like this in the classroom.
Yeah, or simplify it. You could cut the ear off and the tail.
You could,
or
or make it bigger.
Make
the ear bigger. Whatever you decided you wanted to do. All right, and then we're going to take this little template that we have here, and just going to clear our space. Our top down is looking a little cluttered. All right, so we're going to fold this over. And then we're going to cut out this little bat on the fold. And did you find that white colored pencil for us?
I'll turn on. Do we need the top light?
Okay.
There you go.
Let's see. So you can flip it either way. I personally like to do the right side when I'm doing one, but you'll trace it and you can do this part for your child, or you can let them do it. And if you're letting them do it, you'll want to, maybe you can help them hold it down. You could also put like a paper clip here. That's kind of a trick to help keep something in place, or some little weights. Or you can teach them how to kind of hold it as they trace. And it's a lot easier to do this when you have the cardstock type of template. Okay. And you can see it's not going to be perfect.
Batman.
All right, where'd my scissors go? Here they are. All right, so here it is. We have cutting on the fold. So your choice is you can prepare this. There we go. See if that's better. You can prepare this for your child, or you can give them the template to trace themselves. But either way, you're just folding a regular piece of paper over in half, and then we're going to cut it out. Just like, you know what? You are right. I don't personally know anyone who has not cut out a paper heart on the fold sometimes. So it's just like the heart. Did we do heart on the fold in one of our
We did heart on the
lives?
fold last year, I think.
Well, bat on the fold, this is thanks to my mother, where I learned bat on the fold. She always had this out in her classroom around Halloween time. And so I always had it in my classroom as well. And it is just really, really satisfying. I think it's even more satisfying than the hearts.
Because
All
it's a
right,
little
so
more
here
complicated,
I'm
right?
coming to the end, okay? And I'm going to kind of cut that off because I've still got this little bit to do. So it's really good for your child's fine motor skills. Of course, they would be using child-sized scissors.
Yep.
If they need help with any part of it, it is okay to, it's always okay to help your child.
Yeah, and we have
If I had cut that out perfectly, you would have seen like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, it even works, even though I kind of
wearing a hat.
a bat wearing a hat. It still looks like a bat.
Sure.
I think I could cut out little ears if I wanted to. You want to cut out some little ears?
Oh, yes, of
I don't
course.
know. Could save the bat outline. Perfect. All right. So, and then we open it up. And we've got a little bat. Okay. Oh, okay. That's adorable. Super cute. We've got a little bat. And what I love to do is to give kids a little bit of string and some tape, and then they can hang their bats up and let them fly around and, just have fun with that.
Yeah, these are great.
You can name your bat. You can decide, I think this bat was a little brown bat. It's very similar to this one. So maybe it's your little brown bat and you do it on brown paper, or maybe it is a little black bat just for Halloween. You can tape it to your windows to use for decorations. Our kids just really love just like playing with them. Now, something cool that David has done for us, for those of you who want to take this a step further, where did that template go?
You cut it.
Oh, did I? I still have them. I still have some of them. But David actually made. I totally cut it up. David actually made some tiny bats.
Very tiny bats.
Some very tiny bats, and I looked at that and I thought, oh my gosh, that is going to be really difficult to cut out for a little child. So those might be the tiny bats that you cut out. But it would show that bats come in all sizes.
There are
they
really tiny
do.
bats.
There is a bumblebee bat out there. So maybe you.
But an older child who really is into cutting might really enjoy cutting out a bunch of little bats.
They might.
And then maybe gluing them together or making a display.
You also could use it as a gluing activity. I had a piece of paper around here. Hang on just a sec. You could glue your bat into a cave, but also you could glue it onto another piece of paper to show the silhouette. And I just think that is a really nice extension of this cutting work. Because it just shows off the silhouette.
I would love to watercolor a bat scene or something, like a cave.
You could.
Behind.
You could make a cave scene.
Yeah.
And then,
put your bat in front of it.
In it.
Yeah, that'd be fun. If you guys do any of these cool
or make
activities,
a little collage if you've got a very
share those in the community. I want to see. I want to see the
if you've
bat
got a variety
creativity. Yes.
of sizes, you could.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. You could maybe put the sizes in. Maybe it's like it looks like they're flying out of the cave.
Or it's just fun to glue. It just helps you to practice your gluing skills. So with this bat being so large, this would be edge gluing for those of you who are looking into the primary foundational material.
Right.
So you would take your little paintbrush, which would be your glue brush, and you would dip it in a little bit of liquid glue, and then you would
a little bottle
paint it around the edges of this big bat, and then turn the bat over and then show your child how to press it down. That is a great activity in itself.
Totally.
Very
Very
much.
much.
Flip us back
Very
around.
much a good part of the primary curriculum there. Let me.
Fun. Yes. Well, that is a wrap for today, friends. I hope you enjoy this bat activity. Look in our community, and we will share. David will share the templates.
It's there, guys.
Oh, is
Go
it
and
already
enjoy.
there?
Yes.
Okay, great. So if you're in the community, go download your little bats and play with your printer sizes. You can print them at 100%, but I recommend adjusting your printing. I think I always look and see where the edges are. Make it as big as you can for the paper in your printer, and you will be happier. This turned out like the absolute perfect size. for this regular black colored construction paper that I have here. Okay.
All right.
All right, and that is all. If you want more information on Montessori, or if you're curious, if you're new and curious about our community and the curriculum that we offer, you can visit us at childoftheredwoods.com.
.com. Yes, you can reach us by mail at hello@childoftheredwoods.com. We also have a chat feature that is available many days on our website, childoftheredwoods.com. And if you don't reach us, just send us an email.
Yep.
Okay, we will be back next week with another Power Hour. Until then, have a great
Batrific day.
Have a batrific day.